Hey, Nick, good to see you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How have things been?
Very good, very good. We'll wait for people to join.
For sure. I see we're at the top of the hour, so we will, of course, wait for a few people to join. I think as we wait for people to join, I think it would be great to see where everyone is joining us from. Elio, so what do you think? Should we get people to write in the chat whereabouts they're joining us from?
Right in the chat where you're joining from. It's always good to see how far and wide our attendees are coming from.
I am joining from the very sort of gloomy, cloudy Reading in the UK today. I can see Norway, Athens,
Ireland, Italy,
a lot of Germany.
Yeah. The Netherlands, Denmark, France, Spain, Israel.
Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, that's the furthest so far.
That is the furthest so far. 2 from South Africa. Sweden, lovely place. Another Germany. Oh, well. Canada.
Oh, that's going to be a test of geography.
No, it's so. Oh, another one from Reading, where I'm from, India. It's so good to see, though. I think as people are joining the conversation, it is so good to see, and that's why I think these conversations are so fruitful, because you get such a diverse perspective around different thoughts. So I am really looking forward to the conversation today.
Very, very global. We've got Lagos. We've got Silicon Valley. Cuba.
Just Manchester.
Not quite Silicon Valley then, just Manchester.
Hi from sunny Amsterdam.
So we'll give it a few more moments.
For sure. I can see the number going up quite nicely. So it looks like we're going to have a really good attendance today.
So this is going to be interesting, isn't it? You know, how to help developers prioritize security in their software development. Terribly important topic. You know, gone are the days where you can just willfully not worry about putting usernames and passwords into code and it's going to be fine. Real kind of big, important topic. So it should be a very interesting session.
Yeah, I think for so long, security has been like a second-class citizen in the software development model. And like developers, they haven't always resisted security, but it's always been something which has been, it causes friction. So I think like the topic of today is how to help encourage developers to actually prioritize security. So I think won't get into too much now, but there's hopefully some golden nuggets that people are going to be able to take away to hopefully help developers be a bit more mindful when it comes to security.
Yeah, and we'll say it again in a moment when we actually kick off, but please make sure this is an interactive session. We want you to ask questions in the chat. Press the button if you want to join us on stage to ask your question. Write it in the chat. Press the button to say you want to join. We do want this to be interactive. We have some polls that we'll be doing to kind of ask for your opinion and your answers and your thoughts on things. So, yeah, we want this to be interactive. It is not a presentation. We are not here to kind of just stand and talk to you. We want this to be a lively, fruitful discussion.
Perfect. So I think we're actually at a few minutes past now, 3 minutes past. So I think I can see the audience. I think we're at quite a good number. So Elio, I think we're good. We're good to get started.
So Nick, let's kick off. Welcome everyone to day 2 of InFocus. This is the last session of the day where we are prioritizing on security. And we've had other interesting topics yesterday and tomorrow, but today has all been about security. And this session is going to be how to help developers prioritize security in software development. I'm Elio Gambetta, look after enterprise accounts and public sector out of the UK, and my co-host, Nick.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick introduction. So my name is Nick. I'm one of the sort of like field security architects here at GitHub. So really focusing on one of our solutions called GitHub Advanced Security. So super excited for this conversation today, and really hoping that you find it useful too.
Excellent. And as we've said, please ask questions in the chat. Please raise your hand. There will be polls that will come up that you'll be selecting your answers in this area of the screen. I am mirrored, so I'm pointed the wrong way when I look at myself, but that's where you should be seeing them. And if you want to request a demo, please also do so. There's the button up the top there to do that. So, Nick, what does it mean to write secure software as a developer? What are the things that developers have to think about and consider? And what's kind of changed over the last couple of years that they've got to be even more kind of aware of what they do?
Yeah, so, and I think, like, firstly, I think it's important to answer Stefan's question, because I think it links to this specific question. So yes, so I absolutely started as a developer, still do software development today. If you check out my GitHub, Nick Liffen, you'll be able to see some of the development. So not per se fully focused, but absolutely still doing development. So hopefully I will be able to relate, and you will hopefully be able to relate to the conversation today. But I think fantastic question to ask. I think it's very beneficial, and I appreciate you keeping me honest on the pronunciation. So
and just to that point, Nick, I mean, I did many years ago do a computer science degree where I was a terrible software developer, but hey, that's another story.
So I think we want to go through many different ideas, topics today, but I think everyone has their own opinion on what it means to write secure software as a developer. And I'm sure for the developers on the call, you are there being like, hey, this is my view. So I think as we go through this topic, I really encourage you all to also put your thoughts down on what it means to write secure software. But I think, like, one of the first things that comes to mind for me when we think about writing secure software, it's getting the foundations in place to enable developers and for developers to be equipped to think about security. And there's numerous ideas and pocket holes of where we can go down. But one of the first things that I see, and I would love to see if people relate to this, is developers are always so rushed to write software. And what I mean by that is most of us probably work out of an agile mindset and agile way of working. And you each have your user stories and you have your sort of user story points, and you work on a task, you then ship it, and then you work on the next one, you ship it. And if ever a vulnerability comes up, is there any time for you to actually fix that vulnerability? Like, did you set time in your sprint for you to be able to actually fix this vulnerability? And one of the biggest problems that we see today is developers actually don't have the time, and they don't have the ownership from management, from leadership, to actually say, hey, as part of your sprint, you have some time to actually set aside to fix in whatever alerts or problems come out in these security tooling. So I think, like, to write secure software as a developer, one of my first things that comes to mind is it's the capability and enablement to be able to actually have the time to fix these alerts, because it can sometimes feel like developers are very rushed. And I think for me, one of the key foundations is whether you work in agile or whenever you work, however you work, you enable your developers to have the time to say that if a vulnerability comes up that they maybe don't understand or maybe have to learn, they have the underlying characteristics to be able to say, yeah, I have the time and I have the stories dedicated in my sprint to be able to actually fix it. So I think, like, that's one of the first things that comes to mind, at least for me, and when I was a developer, and when I've worked in software projects, I think the first thing is really focused on making sure that you have the foundations. Elio, keen to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Nick. So I was thinking, I mean, in kind of showing some empathy here for developers, they've got a lot to do. Often they need to prove a concept, they need to show something. And you talk about things having to be rushed. Coding in an agile manner sometimes means that you will start with a little demonstrator that you kind of mock up quite quickly to kind of see if it's working in the way you expect. And I'm guessing one of the challenges is that sometimes in those quick sprints and the kind of the quick let's get something done to see if it's right, you may cut some corners. And I'm guessing that then over time, they then get forgotten about and they come and bite you on the rear at some point in the future.
Yeah, and I think like someone asked a great question in the chat saying, is it delegating the security of software to the end developer the best experience and the best approach? Sorry, and I think we're going to answer that in one of our sort of topics and slides coming up later, because I think like up front the answer is yes. Like up front, I think everyone would like, yeah, like we're shifting left, right? Like we're putting testing in front of the developer. We're putting infrastructure in front of the developer. Like surely it makes sense to actually go ahead and shift security. And I think the short answer is likely like yes, but I think like we're really going to get into the nitty gritty part of that question in one of our slides, which really talks about like is this whole delegation doing what we think it's doing from a security perspective. But really good question.
And I guess an important point for that is that developers have to have the tools at their disposal to allow them to kind of operate in a secure fashion. It is still their responsibility to make sure they utilize them, not bypass them, and to be aware that, you know, as part of general coding practices, you are making sure that you're validating before you're doing database updates and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there are kind of the softer side of things as well.
Yeah, no, I think tools are vitally important, and I think as someone mentions, and it's got a few thumbs up in the chat, a culture shift is really important, and I think that is actually that is the great way to summarize the answer of this question here. So I think like a lot of it comes down to tools. Tools are great. Tools are a mechanism, but if you don't lay down the right cultures and processes behind it, are you foundationally going to be in the right place to even start adopting these tools? And I think that's where trust and autonomy really come into play. And I think like one of my answers again to this question around what does it mean to even write secure software as a developer, it means you have the trust from the security person and the security organization that what decisions you make are in the best interest of the company, and you don't have someone always looking over your shoulder. Like you feel autonomous and empowered to be able to make good security decisions. Because one of the hardest things that we see, especially for developers, is security has always been a very security organization, and it's always been very security driven. Now, over the last 5 years, we've seen that become more developer focused, right? That's something which has been like huge as this shift left has happened. I think the companies that have done this well have laid the foundations to say to like developers, like you have our trust. Like, yes, we're going to verify what you've done is in the best interest of the company, but we trust you. Like we're going to provide automation. We're going to give you the tools and the capabilities to run this yourself. And I think like one of the nice words that sums it up, and I'm keen to see if people agree, is frictionless. Like sometimes when it comes to security for a developer, like there is a lot of friction in the way. And I think this makes it hard for developers to prioritize security. Again, going back to one of my first points of they're working in these sprints, they have all these user stories, and they come across a pull request that gets blocked purely because there's a security vulnerability. Well, if there's friction, which is going to take 1 or 2 days to get the data, and then there's friction to go ahead and fix it, the developers aren't going to prioritize security. So I think like one of the key things that I would always evangelize, and like one of the key foundations to writing secure software, is ensure that you give trust and autonomy to your developers, but then also make sure that you do have the capabilities to actually verify what your developers are doing is sort of in the best interest of your company.
So Nick, maybe that's an interesting thing that people can, either raise their hand or put a comment into the chat. Are people seeing more or less kind of code reviews being done by other developers to kind of validate the code that's been written? Is that something that's happening more so or less so these days?
Yeah, and I think there's like that second to bottom point. Devs also need to know where they can go for help. That is such a good topic. And like, I'm sure we can likely dive into that. But like what you traditionally see is you have these security tools that are fantastic at letting you know what a vulnerability is. But they often don't tell you how to fix that vulnerability. And that's one of the biggest reasons developers struggle to prioritize security. And I would love to know who wrote that comment. It's like they wouldn't know how to fix every vulnerability. Like I wouldn't know how to fix every vulnerability. And the tool even needs to be able to give you very language specific examples. Or you need to have a security organization, or you need to have some way where people are able to reach out to other developers. And again, you're reducing the friction in ensuring that developers can find who they need to talk to. So I think fantastic question. And yeah, and I think like people are obviously doing code reviews, which is great, fantastic. And I think that's summarized there. Like code reviews is not a security review. But I think hand in hand, they make a very good review process in a PR. And I think as we get on to some of the tooling conversations, which is next, I would love to see what people do in that space.
So who said it was me? Do you want to raise your hand, come on stage and ask the question? It's all about, is delegating security of software to the end developer the best approach? It'd be great to kind of hear what your thoughts are on that. I guess, Nick, as a lot of people have been saying, unless you're really a security expert, you're very aware, delegating it to someone that isn't necessarily fully aware maybe isn't the kind of the safest thing to do.
Yeah, agreed. And that's where you like you need to have that knowledge, or if you don't have that knowledge, you need to be open with that and say, hey, we don't have that knowledge, and like have a way for people to be able to ask questions and find out each way. And I think maybe one final point on this before we move on to the poll, and I think it has two sort of thumbs up, is if it isn't encouraged by management, code reviews are not going to be taken seriously. And I think that's a fantastic point. And I think like as developers, this is something which I try and put on myself. Like if I'm writing code and maybe management in a prior life hasn't understood, that's where you as a developer community can really come together to, again, explain the value. And again, there are some great articles out there. Maybe we can link to a few in the chat. But I completely agree with that. I think it's a fantastic point, and making sure that you have management brought in is such a foundation.
So, Nick, one of the things that we hear is that if things have to be done manually, then they don't get done. They get skipped. They get kind of sidestepped. So automation is a very, very key part to ensuring that you have a smooth process. So let's ask everyone. We'll be doing the first poll on that side of the screen. Do you enable developers to run security scans autonomously?
Yes. So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen to ensure that we get that poll sent out. So again, the poll is really focused on, do you enable developers to run security scans autonomously? So if you're as a developer, are you able to do this? If you're as a security person, do you enable your developers to do things autonomously? And there's a poll tab at the top where you're able to go ahead and vote. And as you can see, the majority are on the yes.
No one can see that, Nick. Only you and I can see that till the results come in. Oh. It's not like Eurovision where you get them country by country. Only you and I can see that. But let's share them now.
Perfect. So
Elio, rather interestingly, it started off with the vast majority saying yes, and then as the rest of the results came in, it kind of more evened out. So about half saying that they do. They don't need to contact anyone. It is autonomous. But quite a few people saying no, they don't. And some people saying, I guess it depends in the scenario that you're in. Certain maybe areas of development, it does happen, and others it doesn't. So very interested if anyone's got any comments about that. Nick, if we go back to sharing your screen, and we'll continue looking in the chat just to see what people are saying.
Yeah, I'd love to get, again, for the people that put no there, I would love to maybe, and even for the people that put yes, if you feel comfortable, you can click the raise a hand button and come onto stage. I think that would be a fantastic way just to get people's thoughts.
And Yusuf, thanks there for reminding me. There's nothing worse than when you're screen mirroring and you're deliberately pointing to the wrong side of the screen, but everyone sees it right. So thank you for letting me know that I am pointing the right way there.
Okay. Perfect.
So if we move on to the next slide, Nick.
Perfect. And I think just to summarize this point, and I think like this is something that we are seeing evangelized more. This is more, I think like it was really reassuring to see the people that are like, yes, we absolutely give autonomy. I think like one of the best phrases that I have seen is this. So this is a quote which I got, and I think it sums it up perfectly. Like no single person or organization is responsible. It's responsible of everyone, and that's why like autonomy and trust is so important, because like the more that you try and reduce people to be able to run security scans themselves, the less they are going to actually do it, and that actually means that like you aren't going to get the security adoption that you want, and developers won't prioritize. So again, one of the key takeaways that I would love for people to take away, again, this is one of the most trivial ones, is trust and autonomy when it comes to your process is a fantastic way. And again, ensure that you have the capabilities to verify. But again, security is a collection. It absolutely isn't a single aspect.
So what impact does security tooling have on a developer then?
And I hope this per se provokes a lot of conversation. There's been some great conversation in the chat. I would love to have someone come on stage, and maybe a developer who uses security tooling. Again, like please feel free just to click the raise a hand button and come on stage, because this is something which is really important to me. And I think this is something which ensures that developers are going to prioritize security. So in this whole shift left market, what we've gone ahead and done is we've gone ahead and taken tools and we've shifted them left, right? And now developers are doing more and more security. But when we think about what that has actually gone ahead and done, is we've gone ahead and, again, 5-6 years ago, security was really meant for security people, right? So these tools are really meant for the security persona. But shift left happened, and what we done was we took them tools, we shifted them left, and we put it in front of a developer and said, hey, good luck, we've shifted left. Life is success. Life is brilliant. And what we realize is companies weren't getting the adoption that they thought. And going back to what I mentioned earlier, security was still being the second-class citizen. And one of the biggest reasons being is developers find it hard to use tools that aren't meant for them. These security tools were meant for security personas. And I think one of the biggest problems that we've seen is developers find it hard to use. There's a lot of friction. And people often don't think about the experiences that these tools actually cause. And again, someone mentioned it earlier around these tools, like tooling gives you lots of information about what the vulnerability is, but developers really want information around how do I fix this vulnerability? So I think one of the biggest impacts that security tooling has from a software developer standpoint is it creates these experiences that maybe were unknown. And the main one being, a lot of these tools weren't meant for developers, so they do find it quite hard to use. And like I think it would be like, I'd love to get again people's thoughts on this, because that was one of the biggest shocks when I first started using security tooling from a software developer standpoint. Was like I had my Jest testing tools, I had my CI tools that were very focused from a dev perspective, maybe GitHub Actions, and I was using a security tool, and I found it really hard to actually use. And when I started like using it, it was by far the biggest blocker in the way that I was working. And the reason for it was the tool wasn't really meant for me. And that meant that I didn't prioritize security, because there were easier things for me to do. Like there were other things for me to get on with. I wasn't going to wait 6 hours to actually go ahead and get the results. So I think that was one of the biggest aspects from me. What about you, Elio?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just going to point out, so Stephen, I mean, feel free to raise your hand and come on stage. You talked about looking to do security scans with each pull request, but equally you've said that you're new to the journey. So it'll be interesting to understand how you're finding it. Have you got the right information to learn and to progress? Or if there's anyone else that would like to make a comment. Connor, you've made a good comment there.
Yeah, and I think,
come on stage, please.
Oh, we have.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah. So I've only just recently started looking into security tools. I just began my journey by just reading literature on Google Scholars and everything. So that's how I've begun. I work for Groundwell, a company that prints on sunny surfaces. So it's a new startup company. So I'm trying to introduce security tools to help establish us. Yeah.
Excellent. And there's a couple more that we can invite on stage as well. Lars and Connor. So do you feel that the industry could be doing more to help you, Stephen? You think you've got enough to kind of be able to learn, or could we be helping you better with more education and more guidance?
In terms of where I've started is just like GitHub Docs, really, to be honest with you. The first tool I've seen a lot of literature was OWASP Zap.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's a lot of literature on that, so that was my first sort of protocol. But as a developer, you're seeing all these acronyms. I know developers love acronyms, but you're seeing SAST, SAST, and DAST, and it's really confusing because you don't really know which tool is doing for what. And it was only just till recently, the last podcast or you had today, that I realized that SAST was for SQL injection. So there is still that learning gap that I feel like we need to make clearer.
And absolutely. I mean, education awareness is very often one of the key things to helping developers be aware of what they're doing and why they have to be careful. For example, having a web form without validating your data inputs and then potentially updating them to a database does leave you very vulnerable to SQL injection. That type of vulnerability has actually been around for years and years and years. But just being aware of the things to protect yourself against is an important part of the process.
But I think to that point, right? Maybe that's something which I hadn't thought of, but I think to the point that's just raised, to this question is, so what impact does security tooling have on a developer? There are so many different types of security, right? There's DAS, there's SAS, there's secret scanning, there's SEA, and I think that's an item which maybe I hadn't considered, but I think for people that are new to security, what ones should you run? Where do you go to find it? So I think the impact is greater than the experience of the tools. It actually comes before that. It comes around actually what tooling do I even need to use? But I think it was a fantastic point raised there. And
John, you've put an interesting link in there. Do you want to come and talk about that? Because you said that there's something.
Thanks for having me on stage. Thanks for having me on stage, guys. I'll hop on whenever I've got another good point to say. Cheers.
John, do you want to talk about that particular tool that you've put a link in there?
Yeah, so basically, I just try follow people on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I've seen there's a lot of communities now trying to bring together repositories of different tools that people have tried, evaluated, and this guy, I think it's Scott Malak, is doing a really good job of promoting the whole security culture shift and sharing, as well as Slack and different communities on Slack as well.
Great stuff. So you've found that as a really good resource, nicely hosted on GitHub, that kind of helps to kind of raise awareness across the developer community then. Any specific tool that you call out, or is it just generally a good set of resources?
Aquasec are doing a really good job at Terraform toolings. Also, there's the usual Clear, Gripe, that sort of stuff, yeah. But GitLeaks is also good for passwords as well. So.
Yeah,
excellent stuff.
I think fantastic points, and I think like I really appreciate you sort of like sharing that. There is so much knowledge out there. Finding it is probably the hardest thing. So I think really appreciate you sharing it, and hopefully people in the chat will actually take that link down, and hopefully it will help people. So really do appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you, guys.
Good. Yeah, thanks for that, John. Gustav, you've got an interesting point there. You say that you'd rather choose a skilled developer, rather than any tool. Do you want to come on to discuss that a little bit more? It's a big challenge as organizations try and expand what they do as they try and hire more developers. Sometimes cost constraints aren't easy to always have the most experienced, but it'd be great to kind of hear some of your thoughts on that if you want to come on stage. And some other great comments there in the chat. So Nick, security tooling. There's so much of it out there. Some we provide, some others provide. It's sometimes hard to know what's the right place to start, where to start, how to use it. But I think touched on it a little bit before. Automation is a key part of this. If you've got too many things that you have to do manually, things get missed out. And one thing that we do find is that, security tooling is only as good as its use.
Yes. And that's why I think in the market, we're seeing this change. Like, again, like there's so much security tooling like IAC, container, SaaS, that like there's just so many nowadays. And I think runtime that someone pointed out there, like there's so many different interpretations. And that's why like previously in the security market, you've seen like success is number of results and number of alerts. And that has always been what a lot of companies have judged security tooling by, is how many alerts can you find. But I think that's why we've seen a lot of shift to, and just as that point mentions last in the chat, we've just seen the shift in the market being like, man, false positives suck. And I think like that's sort of where the market is going, is like, number of alerts is now not success. The results are now really the success, and the quality of the results. Again, if you have a tool that gives you 1,000 results, but 97 of them are false positives, you're going to lose trust in the tool, and you're no longer really going to look at the results. And that is sort of where over the last sort of like, especially the last year, a lot of these security toolings have now gone and said, we would rather produce less results that are a lot more accurate, because it means the developer's going to do something about it. So again, going back to my previous example, like you can have a tool that gives you 1,000 alerts, but if you only look through 3%, you're only really going to fix a few of them. But if you have a tool that gives you 30 and you look through all 30, you are more aware. And I think
Connor makes a great comment there in the chat. You can't join us on stage, Connor, because you're making lots of good comments. Absolutely. The more kind of false positives you have, people kind of go like, you know what? This is just noise. It's nonsense. I wouldn't even know where to start. I'm just going to ignore it. Yeah,
100%. And if I could uptick that, like I'm sure all developers look at that and go, yes. Like the most annoying thing is when like a security person comes to a developer and says, hey, why didn't you go ahead and fix this? And the reason is, well, it's alert number 312 in this list. That was so like deep down. And that's why quality of alerts is so important. But I think Connor, fantastic point. And I see a few others in the chat as well, which is like incredibly useful. And I think that's likely what takes us on to our next poll, Elio. Is there any final things you want to say?
I was just going to say, Dawood, if you want to join us, you make a comment there. What about security provided by source code management like GitHub isn't sufficient? I mean, happy to you to come on stage, press the button, and just kind of see what you mean there, because there is a lot of tooling that we provide that others provide. Security sometimes can be a bit of an arms race. I mean, I've seen things in the past where I've spoke to an organization and they've seen, oh, sorry, you can't. Okay, well, that's a shame. But yeah, it's a good comment there in the chat. And they've prevented something happening and they've blocked something happening. And then within a week or so, whether it was a kind of a particular type of attack, they've noticed that they were being spotted and monitored, and they've changed the attack vector. So it is a bit of an arms race. It's not always about kind of trying to pare down the number of tools, but making sure you have sufficient coverage. And, there will be overlap from one tool to the next, but the best solution is often to have as complete coverage with many lenses on the problem that you can have. But yes, Nick, let's go to the next poll.
Beautiful. So, and this is one that I think I would love to get people's. I'm really looking forward to this question. Elio, do you want to frame it up?
Yeah, I mean, how many security tools do your developers use? So is it 1 or 2? Is it 10 or 20? Is it, you don't know, because you don't know what tools are available to you, because sometimes you use them, sometimes you don't. So it'll be interesting to know from a developer standpoint across many different organizations, what are the number of tools that you typically engage with from a security perspective?
Yes, and I think this one I am, because I think we should see a varied number here, and the answers are like, I think this is going to hopefully get people thinking, because I think we're going to see a range. Hopefully a range between none and multiple. So, and tooling is often companies rely on tooling a lot more than they should. Maybe tooling is a great way of getting there, but super excited to see the outcome of it.
Well, I've seen the results, and I think you're going to be shocked. Let's put the results live.
Oh, really? How many?
So very interestingly, it's quite polarized between kind of we don't do any, and actually we do quite a bit, which I was surprised.
There's two very conflicting comments in the chat. There's 0 and too much. I think that definitely sums up I would say security tooling in a nutshell, because I do agree, there are companies that don't do anything and rely very heavily on people, and there's companies that rely heavily on tooling, and then it can be perceived as slowing down developers, because that is something that is often not thought about. And going back to my previous slide, I think the experience is so important. And look at them comments coming in now, Elio.
So yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to kind of come on stage, Ozan, you've got a great comment in there. Yusuf also making a good comment. If someone wants to join us and say what you've seen in your organization about some of the challenges of either having no tools or having just too many, it would be great to hear you.
Yeah, Ozan, especially, and hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. I think so many people can relate to this. I would love to, again, don't have to mention the company name, but if you can give a bit of your experience, it would be amazing.
Yeah, well, the last company I worked for, they were using some security tooling. I wasn't really into it because I was working on the system side there. But the developers just ignored all the warnings because there were too many and they didn't know which to prioritize. So the error number, like you said, 350 might be really important, but they didn't know which one was really important. So it wasn't enough of a tool for the developer. It was like a security expert tool more than a developer tool.
Yes,
like we're talking about here. Yeah,
and we hear that so often. Often too much information is far worse than almost very little at all.
I think it was called white source or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Okay. No, I completely agree. And Yusuf, again, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly.
Yeah, it's just right.
Yes, again, would love, I think you've written some fantastic comments. So keen to get some of your thoughts on top of that.
Well, essentially, one of the main things is that we offer sort of a software as a solution service. So, companies pay us and they get a chance to use our software, which means that it has to be closed source from a business perspective. And one of the main things I notice is security just isn't that relevant because I'm sorry, I'm in my office, so there's somebody having a meeting in the background. Yeah, one of the main things is just that we have quite a big drive for new features, etc. That things such as even bug fixing, it very much takes a backstage over implementing what our customers want and supporting them in the usage of the software. And I think in the 3 months I've been at this company, I've only seen we use Agile, so I've only seen really 1 or 2 security-related tickets, and those are both front end. So from like back end, our tech stack is we use the Google Cloud Platform along with Laravel and Laravel and Golang for a few things. We have a microservices-ish implementation. And yeah, it's just that I noticed that there's there goes into there we go. We have some quiet. One of the main things I noticed is just that we rely quite a lot on the frameworks and languages we use for security.
For sure.
Yeah.
No.
And if there's sorry.
No, carry on, please.
Okay, if there's like a developer culture of having to get things done and working late quite a lot, that sort of feeling of being overworked seeps over into the fact that there's not a lot of attention being paid to security and stuff.
Yeah, and that's a comment that we hear very, very frequently. So, Nick, I think we need to move on to our last slide in this section because otherwise we won't get to the end. We have 20 minutes to go.
Really short.
One last.
I'd like to address Daniel's question there. He's saying all the tools have a severity rating, and why don't developers understand what they need to fix? In our case, we had a private network and an open channel, and we didn't know. The systems engineers knew, like we knew, but the developers didn't know, and that's why DevSecOps is an amalgamation of everything. And we knew what sort of problems could arise in that system, but not in the code. So we had to bring all the people together and work on the problems together as well, because the developers didn't know which could be a security risk and which couldn't be, because we had a VPN and all the other security.
Sure.
What was it called? Yeah. Anyway, we had stuff in place for some of it, but not the others. So we had to examine everything there.
This is why we've been talking about DevSecOps for about 5 years, but it's still very, very hard to achieve because it does mean bringing lots of people from across the organization together. So, Nick, surgeon and tools.
Yes. And I just want to like one, and I know that we need to move on. One massive shout out to that comment at the bottom, and hopefully we can get you on stage on the next section. Fantastic comment. I think that definitely sums it up nicely. So hopefully we can absolutely get you on stage. The way that I like to frame up, just final point on tooling. Tooling is important. The experiences they create is so much more important. And the way that I like to explain this, if you went for surgery tomorrow, you would want your surgeon to use tools and apparatus that were meant for a surgeon. I think as we start to think about like developers, like I think that sums it up so perfect. Like you would want your developers to use tools that are meant for developers too. You wouldn't want your surgeon to be using tools that are meant for someone else. You wouldn't get a good success rate, and that is sort of why we really believe whenever you think about tooling, think about the experiences that they like to create.
So you're saying a surgeon shouldn't use a kitchen knife? Never.
So no, I think that's just a nice metaphor around. So Elio, let's sort of frame up one of the final conversation points, and this hopefully that was a really good conversation around the developer and the tooling. I think I hope we get some other thoughts and people share their ideas here too.
Well, this kind of brings it really to a head in terms of the discussions around the tooling and should it be the developer and kind of, so where does this all live? Where does the buck somewhat stop? You know, what should a developer be responsible when it comes to application security? Nick, do they own it all? Do they rely on the tools? Where do we sit with this?
Yeah, and again, please, like developers or people in this call, like I would love love to get your thoughts. So one of the biggest things and this aggravates me from a dev standpoint, is when someone says, okay, you're responsible for all security on this like application, fix everything. And you're like, but like, what should I fix first? Like, do I do my SAS scan? Do I do DAS? Do I need to look at data from across everything? Like, what about a junior dev? What about an experienced dev? Like this whole topic of responsibility, it so goes untalked about and it so goes missed. And it's probably as important, like as the culture conversation that we spoke about earlier. And that's why and this is where like my thoughts on this, and again, I would love to get other people's thoughts. It's like the responsibility can't be like everything all at once. Like responsibility, you need to almost think of it like a matrix around like, are you a junior? Are you a senior? What role do you have? But also like, do you want to just do the most critical fixes in a 1 to 2 day like SLA, or is it like a low risk that doesn't need to be fixed? Like developers should they need to fix low criticality vulnerabilities? Like, and I think that that's where I want this conversation to go when it comes to the responsibility aspect, because too much we hear developers in charge of security. Well, what does that even mean?
So Nick, there's been some great comments, and Connor, thanks for your comments there as well. Shame you can't join us. You know, it's a bit like giving a new driver that just passed their driving test a Ferrari. The outcome is likely to be expensive and damaging. So, you know, as part of the way organizations organize themselves, maybe this is also more of a management and a senior developer responsibility to help guide how this should be done. Because quite rightly, how would a junior developer know how to prioritize? How would a junior developer know the things that are important to do as opposed to the things that are a little bit more kind of back burner type activities?
And this is where like policies come into play. And this is where like some advice of what I have seen work well. And again, please feel free for others to share their thoughts. Like what I have seen work quite well is like, maybe companies, maybe they start and they introduce a new tool, and that tool maybe introduces like 10 vulnerabilities. You as an organization may say, as an application team, like you need to just fix the critical and high within a 5 to 10 day essay. So you start very specific, and you get teams used to using a tool. And I think Lars, like again, hopefully I'm saying that right, you summed it up very, very nicely to that point. Like versus just blaming someone for saying just fix everything. You start in these incremental sort of like a phased approach when it comes to a per se security adoption.
So Nick, it does sound like policies are an important thing to help provide guidance. If you've got a good set of policies that are well thought out, they can guide people that are less experienced. We have 15 minutes to go. We have one more poll to do. Let's switch to that just to see people's thoughts.
Yeah, and I think let me move on to this poll. And I think like this poll was really meant as a conversation starter. So I think like this one is really aimed at a very broad topic. What should the developer's main responsibility be when it comes to application security? And I am very hoping that people pick a varied number of answers. And there's one that I have my answer to, but really keen to get other people's answer to this poll too, because the others have been very this is how we do it. This is very much now focused on like what people's thoughts are.
So go across. The poll is open.
And
so what should the main responsibility be when it comes to application security? Ensuring no exploits, no new exploits, no new vulnerabilities, no new and almost current vulnerabilities get fixed, and a combination of the above.
Yeah, and just so you know, there's no right or wrong answer to this, and I will give my answer as once the answers come on stage. But I think like it's just so interesting to see other people's thoughts. So I think we're good now to get the answers.
Let's share the results.
Now, maybe Elio, me and you can give our answers in, and people in the chat too. My answer is actually a little bit of the bottom two. Like, it's a combination of probably all of them three things and so much more. Like, but not more from a they need to do more, but it's more from like a planned approach. So I would have put my answer between is a combination of above, but like it's just a foundation into the other. And I think there's a comment on the bottom around like nothing needing to be fixed. A lot of companies take that approach. Like, a lot of companies say for the first 2 or 3 months, don't fix anything. Just get used to using the tool. Like, just get used to using the like is it the right tool for us? And they will say there's no mandate, there's no enforcement to fix anything. Just get used to the experience. And they're the companies that we see 12 months down the line actually get that high adoption.
Mina, you had a comment there. Interested in coming on stage? You were agreeing with a point that I think Yusuf or someone else had made. So I think really the thing with this poll was just trying to kind of gauge what people's thoughts were. I mean, the reality is that you don't want to introduce new vulnerabilities, but that often happens when you maybe are bringing new third-party modules into the code. You're needing to expand a certain capability. You found a module that does it. You're bringing it in. Bang, you have a whole new series of vulnerabilities. And equally, there may be some vulnerabilities that you have not got the ability to mitigate because you are reliant on that particular module because of a piece of infrastructure that requires it to be at that version. And you have other dependencies that are needed to be met before you can upgrade. So it is often a very much of a balancing act of how you expand new features whilst keeping the existing code base as safe and secure as you can.
Agreed. And I think Connor, Yusuf are both saying some fantastic points at the bottom as well. So maybe this is just, I think maybe Mina, you can, if you can come on stage, not like we would absolutely love to have you on.
Excellent stuff.
To the 12-factor app, yeah, from a way of building, the 12-factor app has now probably been around for 10, 12 years now. And even today, it is absolutely still relevant. So yes, I think if people haven't heard of the 12-factor app, it's a fantastic mechanism to at least learn the foundations of almost building blocks of good architectural design.
I tell you what, if someone could put a link in and share it in the chat, that'd be even better. There you go. Brilliant. Thank you. Nick, do you want to put up one of our last slides? Because we'll hold it up there and we'll run for the last 6-7 minutes with Q&A.
Yeah, so just
anyone else that's able to join us on stage, more than happy to. Just
to conclude, and like I think like we've been through 3 main aspects today: tooling, process, and planning. And I'm sure like as like we haven't even spoke. Mina, am I saying your name correctly?
It's Mina. Hi, Nicholas. Hi, Elio.
Hey, again, like, but I will pause. I would love maybe you put some good points in the chat. Would love to get some of your thoughts and experiences.
And Gustav and Guillaume, if you want to join as well, just to get your little clicking of buttons done whilst Mina's talking, that'd be fantastic.
Sure, because I totally piggybacked on Gustav's point here. I have nothing original. No, hi, my name is Mina. Yeah, I must say that, application security wasn't really a big thing for me for a while, and that's just because of, a function of where I worked and the people I worked with. But in taking responsibility for my career, I've realized that, I can't expect anybody to secure my shitty code, to be blunt. So I'm not really amazing at application security, but it's all about improvement, and I definitely agree. I think the 12-factor app is useful for anybody at any point in their career, because otherwise it's easy to build, monoliths, and you end up building. I can't even say you write bad code. You just write code that you just haven't thought about it. I think good code is intentional code, and I think that when it comes to application security, the worst thing is when a bug comes up in like staging, or even worse, in production, and it's been missed because the usual stuff. I signed off a PR, but I didn't test it properly. I didn't look for edge cases, or I didn't really kind of poke holes in something, or that I just was too trusting of the person who wrote it. I'm like, oh yeah, he knows what he's doing. It'll be fine. It won't break in production and make us sit back, sit in the office on a Friday past 5 p.m. So I think that very, very. I'm going to wrap up here, but what has really helped me in my career the past, I'd say 4 months, 5 months even, is this idea that it's in a TED talk, and I'll link to it in the chat, called Extreme Ownership by Yock something. I'll get his name, but it's this idea that I take ownership for everything, even when it should be perhaps somebody else's, but because the code is it's got my name on it in the commit signature, I'm ultimately responsible. I can't be a doofus and say, oh, but ops should have picked it up, or DevOps should have picked it up, or whoever else should have picked it up. It's my responsibility, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Absolutely. People are often the weak part of the process. Gustav, one minute to go, if you don't mind, with your comments, and then we have to wrap up and ask if anyone wants a demo. Sorry, pointed the wrong way.
Well, I think that it's quite simple, that the developers, they build the app. They are the ones who knows it ins and out. Yeah. The more that we can empower them to think about security in a good way, better it is. And we have loads of examples where we teach developers at IKEA to do threat modeling, and they threat model something before they build it, which means that they don't build a risky, API interface or whatever to expose, God forbid, our customer data. And if they don't build it, we don't have business processes around it, which would become a lot of problems to remove. So wherever we can empower our developers to make them think critically about what they're building, that's when we get a lot of things. And we can't scale security by just adding more security engineers. We need skills engineers from the get-go. So yeah. I think that's, and tools help, but having skilled developers, that's number one.
At the end of the day, the best tools on the planet are only as good as the people that are using them.
Exactly.
Thanks ever so much for coming on stage with us. Thanks everyone that's come on stage today. It's all about being interactive and about discussing things and talking things through. Nick, if we just put up the slide with the key takeaways and also the survey.
Yeah, so I think, again, we don't spend too much time on the key takeaways.
Your slides, though.
Oh, I need to share my... Thank you. Let me click on window. So again, we're not gonna. There's so many more key takeaways that we've spoke about that didn't even get into these key takeaways. So I think the key takeaways that I wanted people to take away are maybe not what you see on this slide deck, because the conversation was so good. So I think these are probably the 4 examples that I would say to take away. However, please take away so much more than what you see on this slide, because the conversation is where a lot of the value was at today.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Let us know what you think. It's very, very important to us that we get feedback on these sessions. If you want me to wear a blue t-shirt next time, then say it in the comments. We really genuinely would love to hear what you think. Is the format right? Did we cover the right topics? Are there other topics that you want to cover us to cover in future? Did we go too technical? Did we not go technical enough? Please, your feedback is important to us. Scan the QR code. If you want to request a demo, I've now got this right. Point the opposite direction. Click the request a button demo. But thank you everyone for participating. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all. If there are any last minute questions in the chat that we can address, we more than will do. And there is always tomorrow. Won't be half as cool it is today, because Nick and I are not presenting. No, only joking. Of course, it'd be brilliant. We have 2 sessions tomorrow, all about collaboration and organization efficiency. and we look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you ever so much, everyone. And again, like, really appreciate the chat, the conversation today, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you.